Eagles win! The Philadelphia Eagles defeat the Green Bay Packers 22-10. They move on to the divisional round. Now we wait and see who we play next. Is it going to be Minnesota Vikings? Is it going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Or it's not going to be the Commanders? Well, we can worry about that another time. The Eagles win 22-20. Jalen Hurts did not have the best of games. Let's be honest with ourselves. He did not have the best of games. Hey, whenever you're ready, just pop one in. Man, what a game. What a game from the defensive side of the ball, guys. 3 interceptions right off the kickoff, of fumble recovery. What a game for the Philadelphia Eagles, guys. What a game. Needed this. The Green Bay Packers down the line were starting to get a little banged up, a little injury prone, which sucks. Prayers up to everybody. Hopefully everyone's okay over there. But what I'm saying is they got out here with the dub, and I am happy for that. Let's just go down the stats right here, and then we can go on with the game. So, with the Philadelphia Eagles, hold up. I don't need that. Yo, how's it going, man? Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you, man. Sorry, it was popping back on.
Hey.
Awesome, man. What a game.
What a game, man. How you doing? Matt, right?
Yep, Matt. Yep.
It's nice to meet you, bro. Nice to officially meet you.
That's it, man. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, man, I mean, absolutely incredible game. Absolutely incredible from start to finish, literally from the start, right? You know what I mean? As far as the energy goes, Warren Burks with the absolute tone setter there on special teams. Big play for him. He stepped in, had to, fill in for Nakobe's shoes during the game as well. And I thought did admirably. I mean, there was definitely some missed tackles and some things that you want to see cleaned up on his part there from the linebacker side. But overall, I mean, the defense, this is just the best defensive unit that I can remember in recent memory from a Philadelphia Eagles standpoint, from top to bottom. I mean, the defensive line feels like it doesn't matter who it is on the line. Obviously, Nolan Smith comes up big with a couple of stops. Jalen Carter with a humongous stop on 3rd down in the run game there to kind of force the 4th down play. You have it all the way around on the line. The linebacker play, it's sad to see what happened with Nakobe, but he goes down making an incredible play, something that he's done all year long. Zach Bond gets a big interception, all pro linebacker. It was just a collective effort from the defensive side of things. And I don't know what more you want from there. The offense obviously still has some kinks to work out, but it's nice to walk away from a playoff win or a win in general and still have areas where you say, hey, we can clean this up. We can still get better. We haven't hit our complete 100% stride, and you still beat a team by 2 scores. I don't know how much better you can feel about it walking away this way.
For me, it's the defense, man, because they changed completely from last year to this year. I've always said this. If there was a defensive coordinator of the year award, give that to Vic Fangio, because he deserves it by getting Zach Bond in here, making him to an inside linebacker. He got all these players to buy into the system. It works out. So shout out to Vic Fangio there. But how happy are you with Jalen Hurts' play? For me, I was just like, I wasn't that happy with it.
Yeah, I don't see how you can really walk away from it being that happy about it, right? I mean, there was a lot of plays that were left out there. You see some of the struggles, which has kind of been since 2022 of him in the run game. It just doesn't seem like it's working as well. There were some times there where he picked up a few with his legs, which you like to see because that's something that he should be able to give you. But there's times where, in the quarterback keepers and some of these moves where it's like, you just gave it to Saquon, you feel like you could have got more out of it. And you also didn't have to put your quarterback in a harm's way, to kind of go ahead and do it. And so, there's some stuff there that he has to clean up. I mean, you walk away from a game where, again, 13-21, 131 yards, as we see here from the box score. He takes 2 sacks. One of the sacks, I mean, he had a wide open Dallas Goedert for a hot second that he could have picked up 4 or 5 yards on, holds onto the ball, kind of trying to force some stuff downfield and ends up taking the sack there. So you don't want to see that. But you still come away with it where when it was clicking, things looked good, right? The Jahan Dotson touchdown, I mean, that's more so credit, I would say, to an offensive line that gives them 6 seconds to throw a football. I mean, why anybody gets 6 seconds to throw a football, typically somebody's going to come open, but that was a dart that he threw to Jahan Dotson. It was right on the money in the back of the end zone. He still had to lace it in there, and he did so. The play to Dallas Goedert, incredible effort, obviously, after the catch on Goddard's standpoint, putting Carrington Valentine, kind of pulling the Gronkowski, kind of bouncing him out the club, kind of a thing, hitting him a couple times with the stiff arm. So that was good to see. But it was still a throw that was on time and needed to be where it was on that little kind of play to pick up the first down. And so there's some plays you look at and you say, hey, you could take that. But with Jalen Hurts, this was something we kind of alluded to on Football Stories going into this week. And I know in a major, commercial radio, they said it the whole week too, which was just Hurts against zone coverage has just been a struggle all year long. And teams have been able to kind of give him fits that way because he's not really just willing to take what's in front of him. And that's something I think Jalen Hurts just has to get better at, which is understand that you don't have to strike a touchdown every play. Take the 5 yards, take the 4 yards, put yourself in third and manageable, keep moving the chains, because when you have a great running back like Saquon Barkley, a great offensive line, and a collective group of weapons, you can lean on that long term. It's just you can't always get it with the one-shot play, and sometimes it feels like Hurts is just kind of big game hunting a little too much that way, and not just taking the 4, 5, 6 yards that are in front of him and working to an 8-play, 9-play drive to score a touchdown.
Yeah. It's just with Jalen Hurts, he was in the medical tent it was like in the beginning of the game. What was it, in the first quarter that he was in the medical tent? I knew something was up. He was not back 100%. Maybe he got dinged up. They wanted to check on him. For me, it's just like after that checkup in the medical tent, it went downhill. I'm like, we got weapons here. We got weapons, so we're good. The offensive line can hold up. You saw only letting up 2 sacks for 10 yards. Yeah. So the offensive line did the best that they could. I am not mad at offensive line. I'm not mad at any of that. It just like the chemistry felt off. Something was off with me. And I'm still trying to figure out like why.
Yeah, I mean, they look at the stats. I mean, for the first 3 drives, I mean, if you can call the first drive, even a drive, right? They just a couple plays and they scored the touchdown. But on the first 3 drives, they had 103 yards. They were averaging about 35 yards a drive. And then their next collective 4 drives, they took 9 yards total. They were averaging 2.3 yards a drive on those next 4, and the stagnation, and it kind of continued, right? I mean, they got a first down on that first drive coming out of half, but then right after that, it was another set of 3 downs, and back there's Brandon Mann punting the ball away again, and so at the end of the day, this is something that I think a lot of people expected, which was Jalen Hurts missing time, dealing with the concussion. He kind of even alluded to it a little bit when they talked to him about, were you able to kind of, pick up on certain things or do certain things throughout the week? And he's just like, not really. Like, I'm just kind of worried about being able to see and think and sleep and kind of deal with the concussion protocol. So he wasn't able to kind of, get in on the X's and O's as much as he probably would have liked. And it showed, a player that looked, like he missed a couple of weeks. And so I think it was a humongous benefit. They were able to sit everybody, last week against the Giants and kind of go into this week. But I think you saw a little bit of the attrition of rust that kind of builds up sometimes. You look at the college football playoffs, right? Like all 4 teams that got bye weeks ended up losing their first game. Sometimes when you have to, a time off, it can help heal injuries, but it also can kind of ruin a little bit of the momentum. And that's what I kind of felt like a little bit with this Eagles offense. Kudos to the defense, though. They did not look deterred at all, and they came out looking just as good as they had all season. I agree with your statement about Vic Fangio. If there was a Defensive Player of the Year nomination, I don't see how he doesn't get it. I think they were 28th in DVOA last year, and they finished first this year at the end of the regular season. I mean, going from being a literal bottom, 3 unit or bottom 4 unit in the NFL to the best defensive unit overall, and not even just doing it from a perspective of, hey, they're getting lucky here, or there. It's turnovers. It's stifling defensive on the run part of it. It's just keeping teams honest and bending, not breaking when you need to. They kind of just had it all. And you saw it all against Jordan Love tonight, frustrating him into some throws that I know he would have liked back. And I know he was dealing with some injury stuff going into the week. And, they were dropping like flies out there all over the place on the offensive line. And he lost another 2 wide receivers tonight with Jaden Reed and Romeo Dobbs in the end zone play. So that didn't help at all. But at the end of the day, the defense was playing exactly how they had all season. And I really don't think if Christian Watson was out there, if they had their full complement of players, it would have looked much different because this defensive unit came ready to roll and play from the moment, the whistle blew and up until the finish with, again, the Smith sack and obviously Quinion Mitchell getting his first ever interception, let alone his first playoff interception, along with Darius Slay, who's a longtime vet, getting his first playoff interception for his career as well. So big marks all around.
Yeah, and especially for Zach Bond. He had his own pick. He had his own interception. The play before that, it hit the ground. So I'm just like, he got his get back. And then he was in the back helping Quinion Mitchell get his first pick. He was holding the wide receiver back. So Zach Bond, the best mover of this offseason, all-pro. Zach Bond deserves to get extended now. Now, he got to get extended, bro.
I mean, obviously, probably the reason why he hasn't to this point is because Zach Bond and Zach Bond's agent are looking at the dollar signs, keeping a roll in, and trying to make sure, hey, we can't let Howie Roseman get away with this 2 years in a row, right? He's going to have to pony up and pay some money here. So we'll have to see what decisions they make. I mean, I agree with you. Between him and Nakobe Dean, stop, best linebacker core that I can remember in Philadelphia. Obviously, the 2017 year, Nigel Bradham was playing incredible football, but that was one linebacker. We saw TJ Edwards have some really good, solid seasons at linebacker, but nothing like we're seeing out of Zach Bond right now. I mean, he's kind of transcendent on that linebacker core. And like I said, the Eagles they haven't invested in that position in a long time. They haven't spent draft capital at that position in a long time. And here they are paying dividends. I thought in 2017, when they signed Patrick Robinson for the chunk change signing they signed him for, it ended up being tremendous, big interceptions there. The return against the Vikings in the NFC Championship game, which really was a tone setter for them. And he was a steal of a signing that they made. And Zach Bond has made that signing look like chump change to this point because he's making plays every week and obviously still making plays in the playoffs when the time gets the hottest.
I would not be mad if he goes for the bag because he deserves it. Whoever gives him the bag, he needs it. Like, he's got to protect his family, his loved ones. He's got to figure out what's best for him. And if you're getting the best offer, let's say from like the Saints, to have him go right back to the Saints, it'll be like, yeah, I'll take that. He probably won't go back to the Saints, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, you would think with Zach Bond right now, there's probably a happy medium that he's probably willing to settle for because, I mean, Vic Fangio saw something in a guy who had never been, put in a position to play true off-ball linebacker like Zach Bond has been, right? Like when he was with the Saints, he was just a perennially misused player. They were throwing him up on the line, using him as like a D end in 3-4 sets, asking him only to rush the passer, not dropping in coverage at all. His coverage numbers, I mean, I know PFF isn't, everything, right? They get a lot of stuff wrong too, but when you look at his coverage numbers, like they looked really bad. And so going even into the season, you're thinking, wow, I mean, they're really counting on Nakobe Dean to take a step forward again. Like they're counting on the signing that they made in the offseason, bringing in from Tampa Bay. His name's escaping me right now. Not Levante David, but the other one. They brought in Devin White when they brought Devin White in. Yeah. And so they're like, all right, well, who's going to actually play off-ball linebacker in this room? And all of a sudden, here's Zach Bond, right? Like Vic Fangio picked this guy out of the hat and said, I think I can make him my linebacker. And he was right. And so with Bond playing the way he's playing, he's obviously earned himself a payday, but he's got to be thinking, hey, why would I walk away from a system that has showcased me and my talents as well as this? If I can kind of reach a happy medium where I don't have to set the market as the highest paid linebacker, but I can still get a good chunk of change, I think he might settle for that because it really is best of both worlds to get all the accolades, still get paid, and obviously Eagles are moving on and their run's not over. You could be looking at a team that could be competing for multiple championships in a window. And that is something tough really to walk away from.
Yeah. And not just him. Nolan Smith had himself a day too, dude. Nolan Smith was just going off. He finished with 8 tackles, 4 solo, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for a loss. He's been having an incredible year this year, and he stepped up in one of the biggest games of course, it's the playoffs, but he stepped up. Give me your thoughts on Nolan Smith. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry, you went away for a hot second there. Kind of blipped out. It's all good.
Oh, okay. Nolan Smith. Yeah. Give me your
Oh
thoughts
yeah.
on him.
Yeah, I mean, with Nolan Smith, I mean, at the beginning of the year, in the preseason, he had a couple of sacks kind of in junk time playing with like the third stringers. And everybody's like, well, that's not a good look, right? He's a first round pick. Here he is taking snaps with the third teamers. Vic Fangio kind of boo-hooed everything in perfect kind of curmudgeon Vic Fangio ways, where he's just like, yeah, I mean, he's supposed to make those plays, blah, blah, blah. And, the expectation level for Nolan Smith coming into the season was pretty low. Especially after signing Bryce Huff in the offseason. And, I'm spending another draft pick on a Alex Hunt and looking at, Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat and the way it was, like, where does Nolan Smith actually fit into this thing? And as Bryce Huff kind of disappointed this year, Nolan Smith was the complete opposite of that, where he showcased just a guy who has tenacity to be able to get better week in and week out. I thought he's been better against the run than I expected. He was supposed to be, when they drafted him, Hassan Reddick's kind of like natural replacement as a guy who fits that mold, kind of rushes the passer in the same kind of speed way that Hassan Reddick did. And I thought I saw Nolan Smith get a little bulkier and a little bigger to be able to stand a little stouter against the run. And then also has improved his pass rush completely in doing so, because he was kind of getting whitewashed, it looked like, in years past, just being a little too light, not being able to move some of those tackles. And now he's strong enough to kind of, move around them, fit a gap when he needs to and make a play in the run game. And then also is still explosive enough to go out there and make plays rushing the passer with his 2 sacks. The last one there, just kind of wrapping up Jordan Love there as the refs, blew the whistle. And I mean, here we are looking at, picks that they've spent, and Nolan Smith was a guy who was like, maybe they missed on this, and no, they didn't. Here's a guy who they might be able to count on for a couple more years here while he's still on his rookie contract. I thought, Jordan Davis, he got a couple key calls when he was in there, some holding calls when Elton Jenkins went out. It felt like they were really kind of bullying them in the middle. And so even when he wasn't necessarily showing up on the stat sheet, he was doing good things for them to keep pushing the Packers back and making it harder for them to move the chains. So I think overall you're seeing the youth movement of this team between the 2 corners that they drafted this year, and obviously guys like Smith, Carter, he should have been an all-pro, right? I mean, he was that good. They're in good hands going forward. And that is what makes, re-signing Zach Bond and some of the other pieces a little harder, because you are hitting on so many of these picks. Sometimes it's easier to kind of let one of those guys walk and knowing that you have guys to fit those shoes. But I think letting Bond walk would be a mistake. They have to definitely make a good effort to get him back in an Eagles uniform. And again, Nolan Smith looking like house money at this point.
Yeah, same with Orion Burks, too. He had that forced fumble in the very first kickoff. Yeah. He got the ball for us in the beginning, and Jeremiah Carter Jr. picked it up. Yep. I'm just saying, this defense on another level. I said this on my show, Fly Like an Eagle, that the teams are afraid to play this defense. Like, how can you watch this game and just go up and just be like, oh, we're not afraid, you're good. I get your confidence, but this defense is a whole nother animal with Vic Fangio and company at the helm. I'm telling you, I'm getting those like 2000s vibes, with Dawkins, Trotter, Sheldon Brown, Javon Kurtz. I'm getting those kinds of vibes. And the youth movement, you knocked it right out of the park. I totally agree with you on the youth movement. I mean, the Eagles are doing the right thing. It took Howie Roseman so many years to not draft at like Georgia, those big schools. And then once he did that, you started seeing the rebuild going and commence. And it worked out perfect. So you got to give Howie Roseman all the credit in the world here. You do.
Yeah, 100%. But it's between Howie Roseman and the rest of the scouting department, kind of being able to make this change on the fly, right? I mean, you talk about your blue in the face, right? Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, from Stanford, instead of taking A.J. Brown, in that draft or anything else like that, right? So, like, there's been plenty of times where they've, Howie has kind of thought of himself as the smartest guy in the room. And now he's, looking at SEC schools and guys who have performed in big spots, but still willing to take a Alex Hunt, right? Like an absolute small school guy who he thinks he can kind of build around. And so I think there's a best of both worlds mentality with that, because there are some really good players that come out of small schools. You don't want to ignore them completely. That doesn't really do you any favors there in doing so. I mean, even Isaiah Rodgers, who stepped in a couple of snaps here. I mean, he went to Tampa I think Tampa University is where, or he went to UMass. Sorry, went to UMass.
Yeah, I
from
think it was
Tampa.
UMass, right?
So he went to UMass. So again, small school guy who they recruited after the Colts had their fiasco with him doing the betting shenanigans. And so looking at small school guys, there's no problem with that. But when you're drafting, in the first round and the second round, just take some bread and butter, big school talent that looks good on film and also looks like they can get better at the NFL. And they've been able to do that, right? I mean, but again, if you didn't take a small school guy, you might not have taken a Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo if you didn't understand, how good he was and looking at his film against Ohio State and some of the big schools he played. So again, best of both worlds mentality about it. And I think Howie and the whole scouting department deserves all the roses here because they're learning, and that's all you can ask, right? I mean, you're going to make mistakes. It is what it is. The NFL draft is a crapshoot. It really is. But if you don't learn from your mistakes and you keep bashing your head against the wall, that's how you dig yourself 2 years, 3 years too deep to not be able to make it back with young talent. And this team was able to pivot when it mattered most. And we're seeing reaping the benefits of that.
Yeah. I mean, Jalen Carter did not have his best of days, but he's been getting compared to like a Warren Sapp kind of guy. That is a guy you got to triple team at all costs. You got Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, who's not having the best of seasons, but you still got to put your name. You still got to recognize them.
Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's a collective effort, right? Like, if we saw all the time with guys like Fletcher Cox, right? Like Fletcher Cox, there was tons of times where Fletcher just wouldn't show up in a stat sheet. But then you watch the film and you're like, he's getting double teamed and triple teamed. And it's like, what more can you ask a guy to do? And you look at the rest of the guys on the defensive line and they're eating. And it's like, well, if Fletcher wasn't taking as much of the attention away, those other guys probably don't make those plays. So for every play that Nolan Smith makes and Josh Sweat makes and those guys make, Milton Williams, like there's credit that has to go to a Jalen Carter or a Jordan Davis who are really mucking it up and eating in the middle there and freeing the lanes for those guys to come in and make some big plays. So, defense especially, but football as a whole is the ultimate team sport. It takes a whole collective group to make things kind of move in the direction you want it to. And the Eagles have plenty of talent and plenty of guys who are willing to sacrifice. I mean, talk about what Saquon Barkley has done, right? I mean, he sacrifices, sitting to not get the record. Last plays of the game here, he slides it down and makes sure that he doesn't go get the touchdown because the clock's moving and he wants to keep the playoff train moving. I mean, you have so many selfless guys on this football team that it's incredible to watch, and they're so easy to root for because everybody there has each other's backs, and it's just good. In for the collective ride. One goal as a whole is to lift that Lombardi, and it seems like they're all on the same page.
Yeah, they're all on the same page, but the weakest link I got to point out is Jake Elliott. He missed an extra point. I mean, I'm still getting kind of nervous of Jake Elliott going up for kicks. I'm still thinking Sirianni is going to go for 2 or go for it on 4th down. And I'm like, no. Like, do you see a problem there, or am I overreacting with Jake Elliott?
I don't think you're overreacting. I think it's one of those things like this has grown into be a little bit of the Jake Elliott experience sometimes. It's like, anything that's right there. He's kind of like the Jalen Hurts of kickers, right? It's like anything that's right there in front of him, these little chip shots, these extra points. It's like, oh man, I don't feel so confident. Line him up from 50 yards. You're like, oh, okay, he's going to sink that. Like, it just feels like it's so backwards sometimes with Jake Elliott because like you think of him more being able to bang in those long range ones, and he gets a little skittish sometimes. I don't know if he's overthinking it while he's lining up for him. Obviously, it was a benefit that, Temple grad and Philadelphia native Brandon McManus decided to miss one himself in this game, maybe taking a little bit of the heat off of Jake Elliott on the extra point a bit. But yeah, I mean, you definitely want to feel more confident, but that's been kicking as a whole. I mean, Justin Tucker has had a rough season this year, right?
I was just about to say that, yeah.
Yeah, so it is one of those things that just feels like it's nobody feels like that great about their kicking situation. So if that is the one place that you're like pointing to as being the weak link, you feel pretty good overall that's it, because I would look at 28, 27 other teams at least that are looking at their kicker and saying that's probably our weak link too.
Yeah. I mean, just kicking in general, just a shock to me. It used to be just like an easy one, and now everyone's like missing like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah. It's like, you have one job, guy. Come on.
Just one. You know what this reminds me of? Did you ever see the movie Longest Yard?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yep.
Yeah. That's him. That's basically him.
So you just ripping darts on the sideline coming through.
Yeah. So,
needs.
who's your player of the game for the offensive and defensive side? Let's start off with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look on the defensive side, it's probably got to be Zach Bond. I think the interception was incredible there, and then just kind of in the mix for everything. I have to kind of point the nod, I think, Zach Bond's way on the defensive side. That, and obviously Oren Burks with the big tone setter, but it's special teams technically. So I mean, I give him his roses there. I mean, again, if that play doesn't happen, this game is probably a lot different. And you look at Saquon Barkley, right? I mean, it didn't seem like it was the loudest 120 yards on the ground, but still 120 yards on the ground almost, right? 119 yards on 25 carries. He felt like he was a consistent kind of offensive threat to keep putting them in positions to pick up some of these third downs. And even if he didn't get the scores, even if he didn't have, the really big plays, right? 17 yards was his longest rush that he had today. He didn't bust out any of those big 50-plussers. He just felt like somebody they can count on giving the ball to. And knowing that Hurts was coming in off the concussion, knowing that A.J. Brown was dealing with the knee issue. Devonta Smith had some back tightness and didn't practice on Friday. The Packers were coming into this game saying, we've got to stop Saquon Barkley. That's the one way we're going to lose this football game. And he still ended up with, almost 120 yards on the ground. And so I think that all kind of encompassing, it's a collective effort, offensive line and Saquon. But I think that just keeps the Eagles ahead of schedule and covers up a lot more of the warts that we probably would be seeing with this Jalen Hurts experience if it wasn't for Saquon Barkley putting them in more manageable situations to try to move the chains.
Yeah, so for me, for my defensive player of the game, I'm going to have to go with Nolan Smith. He got the only 2 sacks on the team. To Jordan Love, he did look banged up after the second one. We all knew Jordan Love was going to be banged up with the hand, funny bone, whatever you want to call it, with his arm. He's just been banged up. The whole team got banged up in the end of the game there. And in the offense, I agree. It's Saquon Barkley. There's no other play I can go with on there. I was going to say Jalen Hurts for the very start of the first quarter. He was like 7 for 8 for a touchdown. So I was going to say him, but he dialed back after the medical tent. So for me, it's Saquon Barkley and then Nolan Smith. So what are your grades for this team, offensively and defensively?
Yeah, offensively, I'm gonna go with I'll say B minus, C plus. Yeah. I mean, it's probably around there because again, like we've seen what it's looked like even with Tanner McKee over the last couple of weeks, and we know what kind of well-oiled machine it could be over the run that they had, winning all of those games in a row. And so when you look at this effort, that they left plays out there, right? So I can't give them too high of marks. I think Barkley obviously is a big reason why they even got to the B minus, of that grade. But when you look at it and you got A.J. Brown on the sideline reading self-help books because, he's not involved at all basically on the offense, right? 1 catch for 10 yards, sees 3 targets in this game. Devonta Smith with only 55 yards, 28 of them came on the one play that set up the Dallas Goedert touchdown. So in the Dallas Goedert play was incredible, right? I mean, the double stiff arms that's kind of trucking his way into the end zone. It's kind of stuff you want to see out of Dallas because there's so many times he kind of has that Zach Ertz kind of knack where it's like he'll catch the ball and go down right where he's at. And it's like, all right, great. I mean, I'll take the first downs all around, but with his big body and his power, he can kind of yak it out a bit. And that was great to see him showcase his ability to do so. But again, the offense just hasn't hit that stride that you'd want him to hit. And on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, it's an A, I would say straight up A. I'm not going to give him an A plus, but I would say an A for them. I mean, Josh Jacobs kind of took him to town a little bit here in the run game. He only ended up with 81 yards, but it felt like it was a big 81 plus 40 extra yards in the passing game. So it felt like he was kind of getting open too much. There was plenty of times where, even when, Reed went out and Dobbs went out, that it's like, okay, here comes Bo Melton with a 16-yard grab. Here comes, Tucker Kraft with another one. And Dontavian Wicks with another good catch, 29-yard catch in this game. So I would like to see them clean it up a little bit, but 3 turnovers, right? On the defensive side of the ball with the 3 interceptions highlighted the fact that it was, career interception number 1 for Quinyon Mitchell, first playoff one, Darius Slay, first playoff one period, and Zach Bond, obviously in the same boat there, tack it on. So you love the effort all around. And no excuses in the NFL. This is a team that made the playoffs. You're playing them, even if they are banged up, even if they lost their left guard, Pro Bowl left guard, Elton Jenkins in the game. You have to play them, and you can only play who you have. You hold them to 10 points, and your offense didn't do you any favors really in this game, put you back out on the field, very quickly, mind you. So a lot of times there, they could have gotten gashed, right? Like a lot of defenses, they get gassed when they're out there too much, and it didn't feel like they really lost the steam that they could have. So a straight up A effort, I think, on the defensive side of the ball at least.
Yeah. So for me, I'm going to start on the defensive side of the ball. I'm going to go with an A, solid. There were some times where, like you said, Josh Jacobs got a little bit of free. He gained like 40 or 50 yards. And on the offensive side of the ball, I'm gonna go B. I'm being a little generous here because they did have some nice start. They had a nice start. They had a couple nice plays, so I'm gonna give them a B. Being generous here, But yes, guys, this is the Eagles versus Green Bay Packers wildcard post-game show. First and Feathers. I am joined by Matt from Football Stories. Thank you for tuning in, man. Thank you for joining us, man. Really appreciate you. And let the people know where they can find you at.
Yeah, for sure. So Football Stories, the radio show, we're live every Wednesday from 6 to 8. You can find us at the Football Stories Facebook page. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us mostly on podcast platforms there after the show ends, and load just the audio portion of the show out there for you guys too. Write for the magazine as well. Football Stories, the magazine. It's the official magazine of Brian Baldinger. You can catch his articles in there. You can catch Dave Spud Spadero, Gary Cobb, Paul Domowitch, who wrote for the Inquirer for a long time, along with a couple of my compadres that I do the show with, including Al Thompson, our editor-in-chief of Football Stories, the magazine, the host of the radio show. He's credentialed. He's in the locker room with plenty of clips. So if you guys want in-depth reviews and hear it right from the horse's mouth on what's happening with your Eagles, Al's got all the looks on that. Rock Hoffman, our college football editor, is always putting together some awesome stuff covering Temple, Penn, Villanova, obviously Penn State, the rest of the local college scene, and still chiming in there with a lot of good pro takes too. So yeah, great program all the way around. Like every good program, it's boosted up by the people who make it happen. So a great collection of guys, including myself. So yeah, tune in live on Wednesday. Pick up the magazine at every Wawa in the tri-state area.
All right, man. And you guys can find me at Mitch Tofsky on Twitter. Co-founder of Hardcore Sports. You can find me on YouTube, Mitch Tofsky, Streampunk Entertainment, Streampunk Sports Pennsylvania, Streampunk Sports. You can find me pretty much anywhere. Without further ado, let's go Birds. And real quick, who do you think we're going to play next week?
I think it's going to be Tampa Bay. I think Todd Bowles just has a knack for making rookie quarterbacks look a little silly. I know Philadelphia, we kind of saw that happen right there when they played them down in Tampa the first year they made the playoffs with the Nick Sirianni experience. And so I'm predicting Tampa Bay is going to win that game. And obviously, you get the higher the two seeds. So I think it's going to end up being Tampa Bay. But it's going to be a different story this time around when the Birds have to come, or when the Tampa Bay Bucks have to come to the Link instead of having to travel down there to Tampa. And I think it's gonna be a good game, but I still see this Birds team making their way to the Super Bowl. It just all depends on who they meet there to see what the final destination looks like.
Yeah, and as of right now, with 11:35 left, the Buccaneers are up 3-0, and they have the ball on Tampa Bay's 35-yard line. So they got the ball, they're up 3-0. So I think we got the Buccaneers as well. Personally, I think the Vikings are frauds, but we'll see against the Rams.
I agree with that statement. I think the Rams win that game.
Yeah, I have that too. But yeah, guys, we'll catch you all for the next Eagles post-game show. See you guys, and have a good one.